All right, good morning, friends. We're gonna give it a whirl again. A little technical bippity boopity boop. So we'll see if anybody's coming along, and then we'll get going. I'll give it a minute. As I said, I hope you are enjoying these beautiful days and this beautiful time of year as we begin to wrap up summer. We've got 4 or 5 more days left. So I said before, I really enjoyed the way in which the Bagels and Book study, um, because we kind of dug in and engaged one another and talked about the not just the book but all of what we're carrying these days, and that is really the best of what we are as church, is that we can share our concerns, share our worries, share our hopes, and tend to one another as we do so, and and endeavor to live in such a way that goodness may come from it. So we are. How lucky are we that we might have such a church and such a thing to be able to rely upon? So those people that we would journey through this world with. Good morning, friends. All right. Well, let's get going this morning. It is, hey Donna, good morning. Glad you made it back and found our the sorry for the technical difficulties. You never quite know what's going to happen when you're live. So here we are. Uh, all right, good morning, everybody. It is the 16th day of September. It's the middle of September on this 11/11, and I'm glad you're here with us at this time and that you found your way here. May it's our hope that it'll be a blessing and that you will know goodness in your day. The the Beatitudes, which are this what's known as the Sermon on the Mount, which Jesus gives in the Gospel of Matthew, he he again comes up and it takes his place on this, really just a hilltop, and begins to teach the way of the kingdom of heaven. He begins using these analogies of the kingdom of heaven is like, and then he talks about that those who are blessed. Blessed are the peacemakers, blessed are the, and he says this. He says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for for of them is the kingdom of heaven." And this, that the Beatitudes are often thought of as kind of the the uh, the Ten Commandments 2.0, if you will. There's one. It's a way to think about them. It's not the way to think about them. So don't get too squishy about that if that doesn't really work for you. But it's just the idea that as we look at them, they offer us a way to be in the world, just as the Ten Commandments say, the way we can be in this world, to not be covetous, not be idolatrous, to not be so there, but it's those are much more guided on behavior, where Jesus is but the behavior was always meant to guide. I mean, the whole intent of, and it's very clear in this in the Old Testament scripture, that the intent of the Ten Commandments was to get you to a place where you actually were being that. You weren't being idolatrous. You weren't being covetous. You weren't being murderous. And it's not just that you weren't doing those things, but that those things didn't dwell in your heart. So that it was this notion that behavior kind of, you could train your way into kind of into the feeling state or into the reality of it, and that was for the Old Testament application. But as Jesus arrives, he says this: "Blessed are the poor in spirit," and so he's now talking about how is it with our spirit. How is it with our being? How is it with not just what we're doing in the world and not just how we're behaving in the world, but how is it with what we're intending in the world? How is it sitting with our soul? In fact, the great founder of Methodism, the Methodists out there, the Methodistas, they often that John Wesley was famous for beginning his camp meetings or beginning his meetings with a question, and that question was always, "How is it with your soul?" And it was always the idea that it would encourage this deep reflection. It was to encourage this the idea of not just thinking about how is it, is your mind troubled? Are you worried about a bunch of stuff? How's your heart? Are you grieving? Are you afraid? Are you envious? Like, what's going on in your heart? It's not just that. It's not just what's going on in your mind, but how is it with your soul? And which is really like, in a modern kind of way, we could think about this in terms of like with our energies, like how is it with our life, like our life force, if you want to say that, like in that way, like there's these ways in which we can talk about that, is because the soul is beyond, it's not just what we think about, and our soul is beyond not just what our feeling state is, not just whether we have a warm chocolatey feeling. That doesn't mean things are good with our soul. What it implies is this look at how is it with our spirit, the way in which we're intending to move to the world, what we're bringing to the world in our being, and to think about our very spiritual state, and that the cornerstone of that, the hallmark of that, the centerpiece of that is our relationship with God. Because how is it with our soul is a direct correlation to how it is with our relationship. If we are bringing our full selves to God, if we are bringing our full selves to the one who made us, and we're in that conversation, we're willing to trust, and we're willing to lean in, and we're willing to receive some peace. All of those things are how it is with our soul. And they have byproducts, right? They have feelings, they have thoughts, so we're up for that. But feelings and thoughts and even actions are all downstream of how it is with our soul. That's why soul tending, which is what I tend to think of myself in the business of, we'll talk about how we think because that will affect it, but we'll talk about how we feel because that will affect it. We'll talk about the things we do because that will affect it. But really, the wellspring of all that is where we are in often our relationship in our spiritual state. And if this is new to you, it might be a little hard to parse out because like, well, I have feelings, I get that, I get thoughts, I get that, I get stuff that I do, I get that, but the soul thing, it's this, which is, again, it's the thing that is upstream. Meaning, are we closing ourselves off? I mean, if we close ourselves off, there's certain feelings that are going to follow that. If we are opening ourselves up, there are certain feelings that are going to follow that. Are you picking up what I'm laying down? Are you thinking? Can you see this? And that's why I think this question, Wesley, was so powerful, because this notion of it's this way of getting at what Jesus is talking about in one of this line from the Gospel of Matthew. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for of them is the kingdom of heaven. That what he's suggesting is what often happens is that there needs to be an emptying out. There needs to be this taking out of things so that better things can be in place, or there needs to be this sense of simply removing our own aggrandizement, our own centeredness in our world, to put our relationship with the one who made us more central. And this isn't a digital thing either. It's not just you do it or you don't do it. Done it as well with my soul. It's a great hymn. I had somebody at a funeral once come up who was just, they'd lost somebody so dear to me, and they said, I went to church yesterday. It is a Monday funeral. They'd gone to church on Sunday. I said, I went to church yesterday and I lied. And I said, whoa, whoa. What do you mean you went to church? I sang this hymn, It Is Well With My Soul. I sang that hymn and I didn't mean it. There was nothing well with my soul. And what I tried to say to her, and I hope got there, but it was a bit of an ambush, and so I offered what I had, but what I was really trying to drive at was no, actually you didn't, because to be well with our soul and even what we bring in worship is an aspirational statement. It is a desire to point ourselves towards God, and that actually makes it well with our soul. That our heart is broken, that our mind is whirling like a carousel, that our bodies may be breaking down. All of those things are downstream from our orientation in how we might be. And if we stay with it, like every stream, the water will run clear. Our grief. Now, and I'm not saying all grief will be healed, all things in this life, or all bodies will be healed in this life. That's not what this life is for. But I am saying that it will run clear, that God's peace and God's grace can be found even in the midst of difficult things, thoughts, feelings, actions downstream. And I know this might seem a little arcane and a little gorky, but I hope you can hear that, because it really is. It is well with our soul. That the great Thomas Merton said, he gives this prayer about, I don't know what pleases you, Lord, and some days I don't know what to do, some days I don't know how to do it, but what I do know is my desire to please you does in fact please you, and that our desire to stay in relationship with God does in fact keep us in relationship with God, and that what that requires of us is actually throwing overboard a bunch of stuff that isn't serving us anyway. That what actually is required of us is jettisoning some cargo that we never needed to sail with in the first place. That it requires putting ourselves in the and the thing is, it's all just about proper order of things, because there is God and there is us. And that confusing, and that often what happens is that it is God that wears the golden crown. It is God which means, that's a symbol of that the one who is truly and really in charge, who truly and really is the source of all golden things, a source of love, a source of grace, and that it is we downstream of that who carry on, the silver and the bronze and the other things. But it is truly the highest point is that of Christ's love for us and our willingness to be in relationship with that, which gets us to that question of how is it with our soul, and that our spirits, and these days the thing is, and the reason I want to talk about this today is because I feel like everything out there wants to fill us up these days. Like there's all these media ideas, there's all of these kind of bodily ideas. There's all of these things that are coming at us that want to hijack our hearts, that want to hijack our bodies, that want to hijack our thoughts, that want to kind of load us up and get us in there, that and make us kind of rich in spirit, in the sense of like, I've got all the answers. I know what to think. I know what happened. I know this. I know that. I'm or not even more than knowing it. I'm self-righteous about this. I'm correct about this. I'm right about that. I'm right about this. And that to remember and to align ourselves with the fact that we are not the ones from whom that flows, and that for it to be well with our soul, we begin at the point of beginning. We begin at the point of asking how it is with our soul, that we may understand that we are poor in spirit, that we can let go of all of our right, of our need to be right, of our need to be to have things the way that we think they should be. That this whole state, there's actually a spiritual term for it. It's called exinanition. This idea of being poor in spirit. There's my big theological word for the day. And I think it really looks like this, because we really are in a war. We're really in a battle. And there's this thing that happened in Prussia when King Frederick William II was in trouble. Okay, he kind of taxed the people all that he could tax them, and he was still losing the wars. The empire, the kingdom was seriously short of money, but at the same time, if he capitulated, if all of the sacrifices that the people had made, all of that in the fight would have been for nothing. And so he started to think, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do to raise some capital? What can I do to actually bulwark and encourage the people? And so we did this. He said, so he asked the women, particularly the wealthy women of Prussia, to bring their gold jewelry in, to bring their gold and their silver in. and donate it to their country. But this is what he promised. What he promised is he says, I will give you, like, you bring in your golden things, you bring in your silver things, and I will give you an exact replica of that. All of my jewelers make an exact replica of that, except in iron. And so and the women of the nation rallied around this. That it became, in fact, each that and that and that every and that every one of them would have an inscription upon them that said, "I gave gold for iron." 1813. That there was this little inscription on it. So that the response was overwhelming. The women of Prussia all brought in all of their jewelry. The jewelry was melted down. The new jewelry was made, and that in that they began the kingdom in many ways was saved around because of this. And I think the image is clear here. That's an earthly thing, but I think for our image is clear. Can we that when we what Jesus is pointing us to when he says that that blessed are the poor in spirit, for of them is the kingdom of heaven. It is our ability to trade to trade our own self-importance, our own centrality, our own wants, our own desires for lickies and chewies, our own lollipops and fancy pants, our own desire to even just be the captain of our own ship, but instead to move our attention more towards the attending of our soul and the tending of our spirit, and that which is the relationship with the one who made that. And when we're willing to trade in our gold, our centrality, for what we get back is iron. What we get back is strength in this world. When we want to tend our body, tend our relationship with God. We want to tend our relationships, tend our relationship with Jesus. You want to tend your work and do a good job there, tend your relationship with the one who made you. Go upstream to tending your soul, and all of the other things will, in fact, run clear and right and true. And yeah, it does mean kind of letting go of the gold, of all of our precious, precious things. But at the end of the day, what we get back is strength in this world. That when it is seen, everyone knows that we have sacrificed for the King. So, how is it with your soul, friends? I pray it is good and strong and true. And if you are struggling today, I encourage you to reach out. Reach out to him in prayer, reach out to him in scripture, reach out to him in all the different ways and disciplines that we have, but reach out to him to tend your soul, that your mind might be right, that your heart may be tended, that your actions may be true, and that in them you may trade in your crown of gold for true strength and iron in this world. Peace and grace to you all, my friends, and we'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.